Dawn on June 5, 1944. Panic reigns in the headquarters of the German army throughout occupied France. Radars are detecting a massive raid, parachutists are raining down from the sky, and an invasion of unprecedented proportions is being prepared. The Nazi command is hastily gathering reserves and strengthening its defenses. And he falls for one of the most sophisticated deceptions in military history. Those parachutists, they're just rag dolls, bomber squadrons on the radar, a handful of planes dropping metal foil, and the real invasion will take place in a completely different place. Let's dive into the details of this incredible story. Friends, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. By 1944, the Allies were preparing for a decisive blow against Nazi Germany. Operation Overlord, the invasion of occupied France, was supposed to open a second front in Europe and accelerate the collapse of the Third Reich. But the Allies had a serious problem. The Germans knew perfectly well that an invasion was imminent and fortified the entire coast of France with powerful defensive structures, the famous Atlantic Wall. A direct attack on well-fortified positions would have resulted in enormous losses. The Allies needed more than just military power, they needed deception on a scale that would make the Germans look the wrong way. That's how Operation Fortitude was born. The plan was ingenious in its audacity. Instead of hiding the preparations for the invasion, the Allies decided to create the appearance of preparing for several invasions at once, but not where the actual landing was planned. British intelligence, led by the legendary Military Disinformation Department, has developed a comprehensive deception scheme consisting of two main parts: Fortitude North and Fortitude South. Operation Fortitude was divided into two complementary disinformation campaigns. Fortitude North was supposed to convince the Germans that the Allies were planning an invasion of Norway. This northern country was of strategic importance to Germany, as iron ore from Sweden, which was critically important for the German military industry, was shipped through Norwegian ports. Hitler was paranoid about defending Norway and kept significant forces there. To create the illusion of preparation for the Norwegian operation, a fictitious British Fourth Army was stationed in Scotland. The radio stations simulated an intensive exchange of messages between non-existent units. Mock-ups of landing craft appeared in Scottish ports. Diplomatic channels accidentally leaked information about purchases of winter equipment and skis. There were even exercises for landing in a cold climate. But the main element of the deception was Operation Fortitude South. Its goal was to convince the German command that the main Allied strike would be delivered through the Pas-de-Calais Strait, at the narrowest point of the English Channel, where the distance between Britain and France is only 34 kilometers. From a military point of view, it seemed logical: the shortest route, the possibility of a quick transfer of reinforcements, proximity to the industrial areas of Germany. The central element of Fortitude South was the creation of a completely fictitious military group, the 1st U.S. Army Group. This non-existent army numbered more than 1 million people on paper and was supposed to be the main striking force of the invasion of Pas-de-Calais. George Patton, one of the most famous and aggressive American generals, was appointed commander of FUSAG. The Germans considered Patton to be the best Allied field commander and were confident that he would be trusted to lead the main offensive. In fact, Patton was in a peculiar story after the incident when he hit a soldier in the hospital, and he was temporarily suspended from command of the real troops. But for the Germans, he remained a formidable opponent, and his presence in southeastern England seemed like an ominous omen. Invasion preparations were underway around Dover and other ports on the southeast coast. There were entire fields with mock-ups of Sherman tanks made of rubber and wood. Inflatable planes lined up on makeshift airfields. Plywood landing barges bobbed in the harbors. From the air, it all looked impressive, especially for German reconnaissance aircraft, which were allowed to take pictures, but from a safe height, where it was impossible to distinguish the dummy from real equipment. Creating a visual illusion was only part of the deception. Radio information played an equally important role. Special units simulated radio exchange between the headquarters of non-existent divisions. Operators specially trained in the radio handwriting of various units negotiated supplies, troop movements, and problems with the deployment of personnel. These radio conversations were conducted according to a certain scenario, creating a picture of a gradual build-up of forces. At first, the reports concerned the arrival of new units, then problems with the deployment of so many troops, then exercises and preparations for an amphibious operation. German radio interceptors diligently recorded every message, forming a picture of large-scale preparation. But the Allies went even further. They knew that the Germans were using radars to monitor the English coast. Operation Taxable and Operation Glimmer were designed specifically to deceive German radars. On the night before the Normandy landings, special bomber squadrons flew along precisely calculated routes, dropping tons of aluminum foil. On German radar screens, these stripes created a picture of a huge airborne assault force moving towards the Pas de Calais. Perhaps the most impressive element of Operation Fortitude was the work of double agents. The British Counterintelligence Service MI5, through its committee, the Double Cross Committee, controlled virtually all German agents operating in Britain. Some were recruited, others were arrested and replaced by British operators who continued to broadcast disinformation on their behalf. The most valuable double agent was the Spaniard Juan Puyol Garcia, known by the code names Garbo among the British and Arabal among the Germans. This amazing man offered his services to the British out of hatred for fascism. The Germans considered him their best agent in Britain, unaware that his entire network of 27 agents existed only in his imagination and reports compiled jointly with British intelligence. Garbo provided the Germans with a mixture of truthful but inconsequential information and carefully crafted misinformation about FUSAG in preparations for the invasion of Pas de Calais. His messages were so convincing that even after the Normandy landings began, he convinced the Germans that this was just a distraction and the real invasion was about to begin in Pas de Calais. Another important double agent was the Polish Roman Czerniawski, known as Brutus. He also confirmed the existence of FUSAG and provided valuable information about the concentration of troops in southeastern England. The Germans trusted their agents so much that their reports went straight to the Wehrmacht High Command. Operation Titanic, parachutists made of cloth and straw. On the night of June 5 to 6, 1944, a few hours before the start of the Normandy landings, Operation Titanic began. Royal Air Force planes dropped hundreds of parachutists over various areas of northern France. But they weren't soldiers, they were Ruperts, as the British called them, sacking dummies stuffed with straw and sand. Each Rupert was equipped with a small explosive charge, which was triggered upon landing, simulating the sounds of combat. Some of the mannequins were equipped with devices that reproduced the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Along with the dummies, small groups of SAS Special Airborne Service fighters were dropped, whose task was to create maximum noise and panic. The German command received panicked reports of a massive airborne assault in several places at the same time. Entire battalions were alerted and sent in search of non-existent paratroopers. In some areas, the Germans searched for enemy paratroopers for several days, distracting forces from the actual landing site. The Enigma hack and the vicious circle of deception. The success of Operation Fortitude would not have been possible without one of the main secrets of the Allies, the hacking of the German Enigma encryption machine. British cryptanalysts at Bletchley Park could read a significant part of German encrypted correspondence. This gave the Allies a unique opportunity. They knew for sure whether the Germans believed in their misinformation. A vicious cycle was created. The British transmitted disinformation through double agents. The Germans received this information and discussed it in encrypted messages. The British intercepted and decrypted these messages, saw that the Germans believed, corrected the next batch of disinformation. It was an ideal system for monitoring the effectiveness of deception. For example, when the Germans asked their agents for additional information about specific FUSAG units, the British knew exactly what the enemy was interested in and could give plausible answers. When German intelligence doubted a detail, the British immediately provided confirmation from another source. On June 6, 1944, Operation Neptune began, the naval part of the invasion of Normandy. More than 150,000 Allied soldiers landed on beaches codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno and Sword. The Germans were taken by surprise. Many top commanders, including Rommel, were absent from their posts. Hitler was asleep and for several hours no one dared to wake him up. But even after the start of the landing, Operation Fortitude continued. The double agents reported that Normandy was a distraction designed to force the Germans to transfer reserves from Pas de Calais. The real FUSAG invasion is expected to begin in a few weeks. Garbo was even reprimanded by his British handlers for warning the Germans about the Normandy landings. A few hours before it started, when it was already too late to do anything, but just in time to strengthen the trust of the Germans. The deception worked brilliantly. Hitler was so convinced of the reality of the Pas de Calais threat that for 7 weeks after D-Day he refused to move the 15th Army, his most powerful unit in France, from there. When these troops finally received the order to move to Normandy, it was already too late. The Allies had firmly established themselves on the beachhead and launched an offensive deep into France. Operation Fortitude has become a real laboratory of military deception technologies. British and American engineers have developed an arsenal of imitation military equipment. The inflatable Sherman tanks could be inflated in 20 minutes, and from a distance they looked completely real. They even left footprints on the ground thanks to special devices. Plywood fighters and bombers were created by Hollywood masters of special effects. They were so detailed that German analysts, studying aerial photographs, counted the number of aircraft and even determined their types. False fuel depots were built in compliance with all security measures, guards were even posted around them, and fire safety exercises were conducted. Sound effects played an equally important role. Special units with loudspeakers imitated the sounds of tank convoys moving, ships unloading at ports, and the construction of military installations. The recordings were made in advance at real military installations and then played back in the right place and at the right time. Operation Fortitude is considered one of the most successful military disinformation operations in history. Her success is measured not only in military terms, but also in the lives saved. Historians estimate that thanks to deception, tens of thousands of Allied casualties were avoided in the early days of the invasion. The Germans held the 15th Army, more than 200,000 soldiers, in the Pas-de-Calais for 7 critical weeks after D-Day. Significant forces remained in Norway, awaiting an invasion that never happened. If these troops had been deployed to Normandy in the first days after the landings, the outcome of Operation Overlord could have been completely different. After the war, many details of Operation Fortitude remained classified for decades. It wasn't until the 1970s that information about the Enigma hack and the role of decryption in the success of the deception was revealed. The stories of double agents became known even later. Juan Puyol Garcia, agent of Garbo, received the rarest honor. He was awarded both the British Order of the British Empire and the German Iron Cross, becoming one of the few people awarded by both sides in World War II. Friends, what do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.